Okay, so this is pretty cool one too. It's mango lime chicken and parchment. I love mangoes, I have to say. I think I have to go get myself one after this. So the lean chicken used in this recipe is an excellent source of protein, which is really important for preserving muscle mass and also healing after your cancer treatment and recovery. So what Jeremy will show us too is that this recipe, if your loved one or yourself has nausea and are really sensitive to smells, the way Jeremy prepares this dish helps to contain those smells and makes it a wonderful option. So yeah, I'll pass it on to you, and you can teach us how to make this.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a wonderful technique. Danielle and I, when we teach some of our other classes, we do a fish version of this. So fish and papillote, very classic French dish using this sort of parchment paper technique. So what's lovely is that technique you can apply to all different types of ingredients, other proteins as well. And so for today, we're going to be doing it with some chicken. And what we want to do is essentially use parchment paper to create a sort of food pouch or this food package. And what's really nice is it's a very gentle way. So it's steam baking. It's a very gentle way to cook your ingredients, which is great for proteins because you have a little bit more wiggle room and without drying it out. So you can cook it fully, but without it losing too much moisture, which is great. All the flavors sort of stay intact and they sort of intermingle, and you get this really, really nice combination of flavors and aromas. But because of the package, the parchment package, it also helps to keep a lot of the aromas intact as well and in the package versus the rest of your kitchen. So what we're going to do is get our ingredients together. And again, it's really the technique that I think we want to highlight here. You can definitely mix and match some of the different vegetables and even the protein as well as you like. So the first thing, actually, what I should do is we'll get our chicken ready. And what we're using just a regular piece of chicken breast here. You can definitely do a chicken thigh as well. Just make sure that it's boneless. The thinner it is as well, the quicker it's going to cook. You can do bone in, it's just going to take a lot longer to cook. And you want to make sure that it does cook fully. So this way I do find that it's nice and quick, it's easy, and it makes the process just much more accessible. So I'll show you quickly. Usually, you can buy them really nice and thin. That's really what I'm looking for. I want a thinner piece because, again, even a thick piece, even if it's boneless, a thick piece is going to just take a lot longer to cook. So just to show you quickly what we do, we got our chicken breast here. And what I would do to prepare it for this is the tender, chicken tender, which is that piece that's already almost coming off. You can take that off, okay? You can use this as well. You can make another package, use that as well. But for the thick piece, what I want to do is try to thin it out so that it's as even consistency as possible, or at the very least, just a little bit thinner. So what we're going to do is butterfly the chicken breast. It's fairly simple. What I do is I'll start off where the thickest piece of the chicken is, okay? And then I'll take my knife, make sure it's a sharp knife. It's going to make it a lot easier, it's a lot safer too. And then hand on top. So this is the key, hand on top, you're flexing your fingers up, okay? Don't be tempted or, as you're going through, bend your fingers down because that's where you might nick yourself, which we don't want. So flat hand on top, fingers up. And what we'll do is I'll start with that thick piece and just run my knife. And if you have to lift to check where you're at, you can absolutely do that as well as you go, but just make sure that if you do return it, that your palm is nice and flat, fingers flexed up, and then you have your chicken cut in half, okay? So now I can make 2 with this, or you can even freeze one, save a portion if you want. And so we're going to use just 1/2 of that chicken. So this on the side, and make sure that you have your chicken and you wash it really, really well. I'm also, you notice I'm using a separate cutting board for the chicken. We want to make sure that there's no cross-contamination, which is really, really important for food safety. And what I like to do is I will actually have a cutting board just for raw meats. And usually it's one of these like vinyl or plastic cutting boards. You can even get them color-coded, so you don't forget. I know that my yellow one I use for my raw chicken, you know, that we wash really well. And then my wooden cutting board, I really don't use for any raw meat at all. I usually only use it just for produce like vegetables and fruit, stuff like that, or anything that's maybe cooked. Okay, so wash really well.
I love that you touched upon the cutting boards, Jeremy, because I think sometimes that's an easy thing to forget, right? And we do want to make sure that we're safe in the kitchen. We're not having any cross-contamination. And I like the idea of the color. I like that you have the color for the raw meat, and then you have the wooden for your vegetables.
Yeah, absolutely. Color coding, being organized, I think it just makes for a much more enjoyable and less stressful cooking process altogether. All right, so we're ready to build. Now, in terms of the ingredients, the vegetables that are going to go with it, completely up to you. If you have some extra mushrooms, like from the first recipe, use mushrooms. That'd be delicious in this. You can use, you know, carrots, you can use celery, fennel. For this recipe, we're going to be using mango. So I love the addition of fruit in here. It's going to add a little bit of sweetness, and it's going to pair really nicely with some of our other ingredients. So we're using mango, some red pepper, and some red onion. Now, Daniela, I guess with the red onion, again, it's optional if you want to omit it or not.
Yeah,
right?
optional again, yeah. But I think we're going along with a bit of a theme because mango has soluble fiber too. So that's a great option, as we talked about in the first recipe, about being a good fiber if you have diarrhea. And it also has amylase. So, and amylase helps with digestion. It's actually something we naturally have in our saliva and we release from our pancreas. And of course, just talking about saliva, my mouth always starts to hypersalivate. But again, something else useful for digestion, which means it may also be helpful if you're experiencing nausea and diarrhea.
Right. So with the mango, so what I'm doing is I'm just slicing, I have some bell pepper, a little bit of onion, just slicing it up. I want to do the same with the mango. If you can't find fresh mango, you can absolutely use frozen. We love using frozen fruits and vegetables. We talk about them all the time. So with the mango, yeah, you can just either let it defrost in the fridge or even just run it under some cold water just so it softens up just a little bit, just so it's easy to sort of cut, and you can just slice it up and add it to this. It's going to soften up even further when we put it into the oven. If you are using fresh, a little tip, so I cut off the sides with my knife. It's just the easiest way. And then when you get to this point here, what you can do is, as long as it's ripe enough, so it's nice and soft, almost like an avocado. If you're preparing an avocado, you just take a spoon and you use the spoon to sort of just carve out the yellow flesh of it. So I'm just wringing out the outside. You can see just around the outside where the peel is. It's light. It's very, very blinding. There we go. There we go. A little bit better. So using that spoon, you can just carve it out. It's like, again, just like an avocado, to separate flesh from the skin. There we go. So we have the mango skin and the delicious mango. And then we can slice this up as well. And we want it to be relatively the same size as like your peppers and your other ingredients. Again, these don't really need much time to cook. So we want them to soften a little bit. in the oven. So there is our veg. Now for some extra flavor, what I want to do is add some herbs to this as well. I'm using cilantro. If you don't like cilantro, you can definitely use like parsley or mint, and just wash it well, roughly chop it. Doesn't have to be super fine. And I'll make just a really quick little dressing here. So I'll take my cilantro, and this will be nice for a little bit before and a little bit after. A little bit of cilantro here. Some lime juice. If it's a little hard, you can do is just give it a little roll with the palm of your hand. That'll break up some of those cells inside and will release a little bit more juice. And you know what? I'm going to go with the whole thing. We're going to actually use a little bit. Yeah, we're going to use a little bit inside the package, and I'm going to save some actually for after. There's like a little dressing. Now, if you don't have lime, you can definitely use orange. You can use lemon. What's nice is this little bit of acidity from the citrus acts as a flavor enhancer. So very similar to the way salt acts as a flavor enhancer, and it'll enhance the flavors of whatever you're adding it to. Acid does the same thing. So it's going to help enhance the flavors of what we're adding it to.
And I like that there's still some variety of color. We're still using some vegetables, even though we're going lower fiber. And we know color is the clue to our plant compounds, our helpful plant compounds. So this is one way of still getting that benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to add just a little bit of oil to this as well. I have olive oil, but if you want to use like sesame oil or just regular veg oil, you can do that as well. And I'll add just a small pinch of salt and stir this up. You can even grate some garlic. If you're okay with garlic, you can grate some garlic in there. Like, it's really just a dressing for all of our ingredients, but this is fairly simple. For lime, oil, a little bit of cilantro there, and we are ready to assemble. So, into my baking tray, whatever we're going to be using in the oven, take our parchment, and now I'm going to cut off a decent sized rectangle. You want to imagine that you're going to be using only half of it to add your ingredients on. As long as it's big enough for all the ingredients. I'm making a sort of a personal size one portion, but if you wanted to do a portion for 4 people, you can absolutely do that as well. Just cut it a little bit longer. That way you can fit all your ingredients on top. So we're going to take that piece of parchment, fold it in half. This, and add veg, just pile that all in the middle. Probably going for a heavier portion of veg here, but it's okay. Nothing wrong. And I'll add a little bit of this dressing to the veg first, just so everything gets nice and evenly seasoned. You can give it a little toss just to coat it. Get a little messy. What's lovely, again, because we're cooking in the parchment, there really isn't a ton to clean after. We're not going to be using like a saute pan or anything with our ingredients directly on. Everything is in the paper. So you can even serve it in the paper. And then all you have to do is throw that parchment. We're going to put our chicken breast right on top. And if you touch the chicken or if you touch the cutting board, just make sure that you do wash your hands after. And then I'm going to put a little bit of this lime cilantro dressing right on top of there. And now to seal it. So the other side of the parchment, we're just going to fold over. And then from the back corner, I'm going to fold that in and just press it up against where my ingredients are, okay? And you want to make sure that your ingredients are at least an inch to an inch and a half away from the edge so that it does give you enough room to fold over. Okay, so I have my first fold here, and then take my next fold that over, take my next fold that over, and then just keep working your way around, just folding the edge just a little bit at a time. Because what we're trying to do is create a seal. I want to seal in the juices and the flavor, but also the liquid that will help to steam up and cook our ingredients. And so once we get to the end, that last piece, I'm going to fold under. So everything else is folding, crimping on itself, and then that last piece I'm going to fold under just so that it holds its shape. And there we go. There's our little food package ready to go into the oven. Now this is going to take about 20 to 22 minutes. We want to make sure that the chicken is fully cooked all the way through. I have the oven set to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Everyone's oven's a little bit different. The chicken that you use might be a little thicker, might be a little thinner than what I'm using as well. So really the most important thing, especially when cooking chicken, is that we thermometer to check that it is 165 degrees Fahrenheit internal in that chicken, and you want to stick it into the thickest part of the chicken. So if you didn't cut it as even, which is fine, make sure that you go into the thickest part to tempt that. Okay. Here we go.
So Jeremy, how would you test? So would you put the thermometer right through the parchment to test the chicken, or how would you do it in this case?
Good question. So once you're in that range, like you've cooked it for about 20 minutes, take it out. I would just open it up at that point. Tear it open, and that way you have access to it. And that way I mean, if you're in that 20-minute range, you should be good. If you need to throw it back in the oven for a few minutes, you just do it open. That's fine.
Okay.
You can just do it like that. Yeah, absolutely. It's better to, instead of like trying to find.
Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to figure it out. I think it's also good. We're often asked about using aluminum foil, and there is a reason why the parchment is used. And metallic taste is sometimes a factor of treatment, so using aluminum foil might just exacerbate that metallic taste. So the parchment is a way of avoiding that. So that's one of the great reasons for parchment.
Yeah, we love parchment. If you don't have that side effect, you can use foil. It's a little bit easier, and it works just the same way. So you can definitely use that as well. Okay, so made one ahead of time. You'll see that you'll get some browning on the paper. Now, parchment paper, just so you're aware, it's usually heat tested to up to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's it's not going to engulf in flames or anything like that. But if you do cook it a lot higher, you may start to see it get like really dark and brittle. So make sure that you're cooking the parchment under that heat rating of 425. So with us, 400, fine. You'll see it puff up a little bit. I took it a little bit earlier, so that steam sort of came down, but it'll puff up a little bit. So you take it out, and then you can just take your knife. And like I mentioned, this is how they serve in all the fancy restaurants. So you can just throw that parchment package onto your plate, and then take my knife, tear it open, and then just to expose everything, I'll just tear just the top of that paper off. And I mean, this smells incredible, but just so you can see what we're working here with the colors, see a little bit of that caramelization. This sauce, like you have this like just very light sauce from the marinade, but also from the mango and from the vegetables. And chicken is still like it's still like not it's dried, it's not dried out, which is great because it has all that moisture in there. And then what I'll do is just finish it with just a little bit of that extra cilantro and lime dressing, just to give it that last little punch of flavor. There you go.
Looks beautiful.